the chefs were really anxious. I had to had to hold them off for a bit. They were ready to get in and start clipping and cutting. And in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. One day I was up working on the roof. I came back down to the basement, and they had a new chef they'd brought on, and he was all excited about the live greens. And I walked into the grow room, and I looked down, and there was scraps of greens, and on 4 towers had been just sheared. It looked like somebody taken a lawnmower in there. And I here were my greens that I'd been carefully cultivating. And so when I realized what happened, I said, oh, now it's time for a little educational seminar on how we're going to best harvest these greens and without devastating the whole crop in one swoop. And we coached the folks that began to run this and the chefs in how to come through and prune the greens and understand our the quantity of our produce and how we could integrate that into a menu and still keep the green wall living and alive and looking good. And that was a real process of figuring that out. Any questions?
Yeah, so my first question is, would you say that, well, I guess, are the plants still growing much at all when they're actually in that atrium room, or is the bulk of their growth going on in that grow room downstairs?
No, they keep growing. In fact, we had some young, can you see a little bit on the left? We had some young cucumber plants that grew. Yeah, you can see them a little bit if you look up at the window. They grew up and even made cucumbers. Vines started crawling along the ledge. No, these guys kept growing. They really did. And I mean, that's one thing I've learned with my aquaponics is it's amazing once you get the biology established, how few fish will, create enough nutrients to grow plants, especially if you're not trying to grow fish, to eat or something. And no, I was really, really, really happy with that. Of course, I had, the tank down in the basement. We thought that was going to be just hidden down in the basement. But as it turns out, that's one of the highlights of the aquaponics farm tour at this restaurant. I mean, it's funny, the waiters and people, they're like, oh, you got to see our farm in the basement. They take people down there all the time. So it turned out to be quite a draw. But anyway, the food, the nutrients are good. What else? Any other questions?
Yeah, so one other is, are there any specific topics or things that you want to make sure you train the restaurant on? I mean, you just mentioned how to properly prune greens from the towers. What other topics do you need to be aware that they need to be educated on?
Sure. Well, we started. One of the things I did right away is I set up some logbooks so we could start recording. And I started working with the first thing I did was I somebody who's gonna be the farmer here on this project. And I got really, really lucky. I'm gonna skip down another slide here. I'm gonna show you the exterior wall that we did on the left. We put up this is a whole nother system, and we put one of those Rubbermaid black ag tanks, 100-gallon ag tank, and I set up a whole nother wall up here. And we use koi fish on the roof because the koi fish, it gets a little chilly sometimes in the evenings out here in Long Island, and the koi fish can handle cooler temperature, so we opted to go with them. And as it turned out, they got moved into the basement over the winter and helped fuel a whole nother little system that got built after I left even. And but what I had to, just basic I trained. I'm going to go down one more slide. I want to show you. This is Freddie. Freddie was working in the restaurant as the pantry guy. He's the guy that put away all the groceries and stuff, and he was very interested in the what was going on. And it Freddie just turned out to definitely be the guy. So I taught Freddie about checking the pH and how to balance the water chemistry, and how to use the pH testing. We had a pH meter, and I taught him about the temperature and all the aspects of the grow room with keeping it clean, how to prune it, keeping things looking good. I mean, in a wall like this, you have to come through every day, and any yellow leaves, you want to prune them. You just keep things. You want to be sure. And I taught Freddie how to look and make sure the water flow. And any system, you can count on having some issues. I'll tell you, you can count on having pumps that have issues. You can count on having your systems getting clogged, leaks, and so people need to be able to know how to pay attention, really. And then, of course, with Freddie, I got lucky because Freddie, it turns out, was a mechanic, and he just was right in there. He could fix things and get things taken care of. So there was the mechanical systems that people have to understand. They have to understand all of the components of the pumps and the circulating systems, the water chemistry, the fish, proper handling of the fish and fish health. And gosh, the biggest thing in the beginning was teaching people not to overfeed the fish. We had the owner of the restaurant, Jerry, used to come in the morning, and we finally figured why we had a few goldfish dying. Why are the fish dying? Well, they were being way overfed. And so those are some of the things. And then trying to work with the chef and find out how to maximize this wall. So what can we grow with the small space we have that's going to be most useful to this chef? How do they want to incorporate it? So that's a whole nother process of engaging with the chef and coming up with a harvesting schedule, logging in. We had a logbook. We logged in, temperature, fish, make sure everything's running, the water flow, fish are fed, what repairs were made, because it's important that, you're never gonna, one guy can't be there every single day. So you need, the backup people need to be able to be dialed in. And one of the best ways is you can look at a logbook and tell what's been done, and if there's any questions. And it's important that the people, that backup people, fill-in people, also log in whatever they did or didn't do or noticed too, so that the person coming in can keep things going. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. So I'm just winding this down, but I will say this is what day is it? It's May. Are we up to the anyway, it's middle of May in 2015, and I was just out in Sag Harbor this past weekend, and I'm happy to say that this is I got the first wall inside page. I officially up and running April of 2014, so we're over a year now, and I have to say the walls, things have gotten better. It's really working. What's fun for me is to go in and there's new waiters and new bartenders and people that weren't there for the process where I was involved in building. But it's fun just to kind of be the fly on the wall and listen to them explaining, with some kind of proprietary passion about the aquaponics and how it all works, and to see them engaging with their customers and their clients, and to see people's eyes light up when they go, wow, you mean the fish are feeding the plants? And oh, that's the coolest thing. And then I'll see people go out and drag somebody in from the other room and say, oh, you got to come see this. And that's, for me personally, that's just really rewarding. And to me, it's been a real success. Page now calls themselves they call themselves a seed to table restaurant because they're really doing it. They've been growing celery now for their Bloody Marys on Sunday brunch, in addition to the greens Asian greens, and they use a lot in their spring rolls on the appetizers, and the basils and the parsleys there, and a lot of the lettuces they incorporate into some of their uh, signature salads and things like that. And they've got some great creative chefs that really appreciate having it, and they're talking about building a greenhouse somewhere so that they can increase their production levels. So um, that was pretty good. Any other questions? I got a couple slides here. I can just show you the other little rooftop wall that I did over in Harlem on top of a community center. I'm going to click to the next slide at the Joseph P. Kennedy Center, which is a community center run by the Catholic Charities. This is up in central Harlem on 135th Street in Manhattan. So rooftop, and I did a kind of a hybrid system here with Zipco towers hung on a chain link fence. We had 45 towers, and I built a deep water trough system. And these two systems are all tied in together. The blue thing is my fish tank. I have a little solids collector, and this was designed to be a demo, kind of a demonstration to expose people to aquaponics, give them a visual. And in the next slide was me and my grandson Joseph, the next generation. He may not be a farmer, but he's going to have access to really good, healthy food, and he's going to know what food looks like when it's as it's grown. And I'm happy to answer any more questions, and I'm kind of getting towards the end of things here.
I think just to wrap this up, Teryl, did you use a similar initial consultation and proposal process for the community center wall as well?
Yes, I did actually. This one was done. The initial proposal was done about 8 months before I did the one for the page, and I was approached. It happened right after I arrived in Manhattan. I met some folks that learned that I was doing, greenhouse and urban farming, and they asked me if I would come look at their site. It was a nonprofit that was working out of Harlem called Harlem Seeds, and what they were doing was taking people of all ages, young and old, and educating them on good nutrition, how to cook food. It was a mother-daughter partnership, and mom was a trained raw food chef, and she would come and show people how to prepare really healthy meals. And they were looking to build out a garden, and they asked me if I could help them. I came and I met with them, and I met with the Deacon Beckford, who ran the center, who turned out to be just a really cool guy. And I listened to them. Same thing. I went back and I spent a couple of days, and I came back with them because they were trying to get a grant to do some of this stuff. So I made a pretty detailed proposal of not only of building out the farm. It was much more involved than what I ended up doing, but I also gave them a whole little economic proposal on how they might, create some income from this as they integrated into their community. They had a senior program, a youth program at this community center, and there was a ton of opportunity, and there still is. I did have to go remove this last summer because they finally, after 3 years, got funded to redo their roof, which is good. And I was just down there the other day checking on, and the deacon said, well, we want to come back, and he asked me if I could come up with another proposal, because apparently the Catholic Charity Archdiocese of New York has 35 other properties that could use some food production system. So, who knows where it will lead.
Well, that's great to see too, that this design process can be used in a variety of different places that might be interested in these types of setups.
Yes, I think the key points, from my permaculture training, are observation, really looking at available resources, looking at what you can bring in with your access to what technology you have with your skills, and in the community setting too. What are the community resources out there? Who in the community is going to be supportive of this project? Who are the people that you might want to reach out to bring in? There's a lot of education involved in this process, and I enjoy that part. I love. I get passionate. I can transfer some of my passion to other people, and it's a exciting opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity and a lot of work that needs to be done out there. So that's I'm wrapping it up. I appreciate sharing, having the opportunity to share my experience, and if anyone has any questions, you want to get in touch with me, I'm usually pretty happy to communicate via email, and that's it. Thank you very much.